Hello and welcome back to the Trinity League Football Podcast. I'm Dan Albano of the Orange County Register and OCVarsity.com, and I'm joined once again by our Trinity League football insider, Scott Barajas, as we discuss the toughest high school football league in America, the Trinity League. So this week's episode, we're going to have a recap of an exciting Week 0. We're going to have our Players of the Week, the first edition of the Players of the Week from the Trinity League schools for 2019. We'll have 5 of those because not every team in the league played. And we'll also have previews and predictions for Week 1 of the season, which offers more exciting matchups. So, Scotty, there's a lot to get to for just a 1 week in the books, but a lot has happened. A lot of intriguing games and showdowns already. How you doing this evening, Scotty, after you took in that modern-day Centennial showdown, which was not a showdown score-wise?
I'm doing pretty good, Dan. I mean, I can't say I'm all footballed out, but it was a lot of football this weekend. I caught some of those national games on TV, broke down all the games that I could possibly get my hands on. So it was a good week. We're here on Monday, starting this new week, looking at some new matchups, and we have some interesting ones with some of these out-of-state ones. We're just going to have to go from there.
Well, those games, most of them played on Friday, August 23rd. Trinity League had a really great opening Week 0. They went 5-0. Santa Margarita won, J. Sarah, Mater Dei, Orange Lutheran, and then on Saturday, St. John Bosco got its victory. So a lot of big games coming up this week again. J. Sarah's got itself some challenge coming its way this coming Saturday down in San Diego, but we will get that. But first, I want to thank everybody for joining us back on the Trinity League Football Podcast. And we're going to start with our recap, Scotty. I think we're going to start on the Saturday game, which was played. St. John Bosco, 35-7 victors over DeMatha. And this was an impressive win because it really showed the Braves how they could play defensively. Maybe there were some questions on that secondary. They answered a lot of questions. DJ threw for over 300 yards, though struggled with the passing completion. He was only 17 of 37. That's pretty un-DJ-like. So, but it's only one game. It's small sample size. So, as I saw a tweet from Greg Biggins, don't overreact. I agree with that. But he did struggle in that game. Logan Loya, in his debut with the Braves, had an outstanding game. The former Orange Lutheran receiver, 9 catches for 162 yards. Chris Hudson was right behind him with 139 yards. And John Vaughns had a great game with double-digit tackles. Scotty, what was your take on this opening season open victory by the Braves?
Yeah, so for those who didn't get to watch this one, they may come out with this one like with a, wow, and, another crazy, exciting win for Bosco. But it wasn't quite that. You said, Bosco struggled that first half offensively. I think they gained its composure, took control of this game in the second half. So it was kind of a tale of two halves. But that first half was crazy, and it's probably had Bosco fans perplexed. They couldn't get anything going unless Logan Loya was touching the ball. As we mentioned, DJ started the game out 4 of 16, and those 4 passes were to Loya, who bailed out Bosco on about 3 third downs, including a 44-yard pass that took Loya down to inside the red zone, and that kind of set up their first score of the game with the 5-yard run by one of their 3 sophomores, Michael Hayes. So, prior to that, Bosco actually dodged a blown call. They fumbled the ball in the end zone. It was actually recovered by DeMatha, and it would have been a defensive score. But apparently the referees blew the whistle, called it dead, but it was certainly a fumble.
Okay.
I doubt that would have changed the outcome or momentum of this game because DeMatha's offense was left much to be desired as they were very one-dimensional. They had no passing game at all. It was run, and that's it. And then when they tried to pass, it looked, like a Pop Warner offense.
Wow.
The receivers were dropping balls. The balls were high all over the place. I mean, I know Bosco had constantly put pressure on him, but you could just tell, it was like a two-man, one-man route type of offense. They constantly stuffed the run. They caused havoc on South Carolina commit Marshawn Lloyd. Bosco's one mistake that resulted in the lone score they gave up was a 4th and 23, a pass to the running back Lloyd, who slipped out of the backfield, and the quarterback kind of found him in the open, and he just kind of walked in. And there was really no, Bosco had dropped back, so it was pretty much, I think the linebacker was one-on-one, and he kind of got lost over the middle. But other than that, that's the only thing that Bosco had done that did wrong all night long. In the second half, DJ looked a little bit more comfortable. He completed 12 of 22 in the second half. He continued to hook up with Loya, even though he finally got on par with Kurt Hudson, who had a hard time with it in the first half. I think he tried targeting Hudson like 8 times, and they couldn't connect. And then he hit him on a 50-yard, 6-yard screen pass, and he ended up, over 100 yards. But it's certain that Loya is going to be he's probably the most important key pickup of the offseason for any team out there, and it's apparent that he's going to play a huge part in this offense. It gives Bosco that true go-to guy, and not to say that Hudson and Collins don't have that ability. Loya just has something extra. He has that knack. He just knows where to be. His route running, his instincts. It's just, you can see it, and it's going to be a nice security blanket for DJ. And then defensively, Bosco looked good. It was hard to gauge with the Mathis, offense because they had no sophistication in its calling. And I think the freshman quarterback who they brought in the last series actually showed more poise than the other guy they had throwing the ball. I know it was against a mixed unit for Bosco, but they still he still gave them, I think, something better. But and then talk about depth. I mean, Bosco played about 3 different rotations of defensive players, and I think that's going to be huge down the line.
Okay. Well, very interesting. I mean, like you said, some concerns. Good in-depth reporting there, Scotty, on 4 for 16 start. I didn't know that for DJ. That's a tough start that probably had Bosco wondering. Maybe, I don't know if they were worried or not. I mean, it's DJ. He's going to get it going eventually. So I guess if he started out that slow, then he did get it going, and that's a good sign for the next game. I mean, DeMatha came into the game, ranked nationally by High School Football America. They were ranked 15th, and Bosco won 35-7. Well, before we leave this season opening game, which was played at St. John Bosco, there's going to be some big games this year at St. John Bosco on that very field. Who are your? Let's talk about our players of the week this week. And you talked about Logan Loya, the Orange Lutheran transfer, wide receiver, and he was my player of the week for this game based on those 9 catches for 162 yards. He also had 5 extra points. He's, as we've talked about in the Trinity League Football Podcast, pretty good kicker, and I guess he got pretty close to hitting a long 50-yard type field goal. So that was my player of the game. Scotty, who did you have from this game?
I went with Loya as well. Like I said, he's going to be that Julian Edelman type security for DJ. Yeah, even though he didn't get in the end zone, but like I said, he made those key catches when needed to bail them out. And I'll have an honorable mention, and that's going to go. I give to John Vaughns with those 11 tackles that he made from the safety spot, 7 unassisted, and a lot of them were like at the line of scrimmage. I mean, a lot of them weren't deep in the secondary, so he was playing up, but he was taking, obviously because they were taking away the run. But he looked awful good too. Yeah,
good mention of John Vaughns. And looking at the stats that I was able to find, and I haven't seen, and I've asked about Jay Sarah defensive stats, but those 11 tackles will be, as I know right now, that's the highest total for one single player in week 0. So congrats to John Vaughns, who's either a sophomore or junior, right?
He's a junior.
So a name to remember there. So let's go to the big game of the week, Scotty. You were there, front and center, Mater Dei Centennial at the Bowl, and it was pretty darn impressive to me because you start to think about these Mater Dei Centennial clashes, and these used to be such tough games for Mater Dei. There's been some classic, high-scoring, very close games. But Mater Dei is turning this rivalry into one-sided affair, and it's just so impressive because of the respect I have for Coach Logan, all the good players that they have at Centennial, that Mater Dei is that talented that they can make these games look the way they do. And how do they look? 42-0 after the third quarter. That's really unbelievable that Mater Dei was up like that. They return the Monarchs return yet another pick six. That's 5 pick sixes in the last 2 games for Mater Dei against Centennial. That's just mind-boggling that they're another pick six. That's crazy. Mater Dei had great balance. They had 21 runs, 27 passes. Bryce Young, very efficient, 19 and accurate, 19 of 26, 191 yards, 3 touchdowns. Rajon Davis had a good game at linebacker. He was high tackler for the Monarchs. And how about that Monarchs defense? I'm sure you'll cover that. Here was another great stat that jumped out to me. So Centennial, 31 carries for 73 yards net. That's an average of less than 2.5 yards. Less than 2.5 yards per carry on that stat. That's crazy that they're that far under 100 yards with 31 carries. So again, 42-12. Great opening for the Monarchs.
Yeah, I'll start off by saying that, and I know a lot of people ask this at the end, was Mater Dei that good or was Centennial that bad?
Yeah.
And, I'll say at this point, I'm going to say it's a combination of both. This kind of had the same feeling when Mater Dei put 42 shelling on Gorman last year, because Gorman wasn't the same caliber Gorman, that they usually are. So it was kind of that same thing going into that game. And, and I said last week that Centennial was not a national rated team.
Yeah,
and that definitely showed. Mater Dei still showed they have the dominating presence on that offensive line and its defensive prowess. The game started with Centennial actually successfully chunking away on the ground with Nick Floyd and Carter Friedland. And Floyd finished with, you said 74 yards. I had him at, I had him at 90. Maybe I think the negative yards may have come off the quarterbacks.
Yeah.
But then again, 20 of it came in the fourth quarter when all the starters were out. So, but once inside that red zone, that Mater Dei defense, held them out of the end zone twice, turning it over on downs. And that kind of set the tone for the rest of the game, because Mater Dei marched down the field with Bryce Young precisely hitting on short passes, and then sophomore Quincy Craig ripped off that 57-yard run. And on a side note, Craig also blocked 2 extra points. So that was pretty big for that sophomore.
Yes.
And after that score, another Centennial 3-and-out. And a botched snap gave Mater Dei a short field, and then sophomore Cam Lefleur punched it in from 5 yards out, and that was Mater Dei was up 14-0 that quick. And CC was, Centennial was already in the hole trying to catch up mode, and it took them out of their game plan because they had to throw, and both rotating quarterbacks had a hard time completing passes, combining 6 for 24 for 93 yards, and then those 3 interceptions. And, however, like you had mentioned, only one was a pick six this time, as the quarterback was trying to get out of the end zone. He was going to get sacked for what would have been a safety, and then the kid would just kind of toss the ball over the lineman, but the running back couldn't get it enough ump on the ball, and the linebacker Ray Latui, picked it off around the 5-yard line and just kind of trotted into the end zone. So. And the other interceptions came on with sophomore nickel DB Cameron Sidney, and then Josh Hunter had the other intercept. And then offensively, as you mentioned, Bryce, he was very efficient, and he didn't have huge gains, going with that efficient passing game. And they withstood the Centennial rush, which the Mater Dei offensive line did a wonderful job. That included a freshman offensive guard, BJ Tolo, who got the start. But it was Miles Morale and Ty Marks holding Corey Foreman to 0 sacks. And it wasn't until Foreman moved to the inside in the second half did he finally get one of 2 Centennial sacks. And then on the receiving end, C.J. Williams caught 8 balls. Cody Epps caught 5 with the TD. Kyron Blair Hudson caught 4 with the touchdown, and then Christian Dixon caught the last TD from Bryce. And then defensively, Rajon led the team into 6 tackles, as you mentioned. And then sophomore David Bailey and Ray Latui also added sacks.
Yeah.
And then though Jalen Davies didn't have an interception, he covered well. He did the best coverage of the night on all the receivers. And though Bryant caught 8 balls for 181 yards, Jalen held him to 2 balls caught for 2 yards. So, that kind of gives you a little insight on him. And then it wasn't until Corona Centennial went to their third QB in the fourth quarter after the running clock did they start moving the ball on a mostly second and, team defense. But I will say this, though. Their junior quarterback, Jake Resloff, looked more comfortable and showed more poise in the pocket and connected with Bryant on some nice passes. And that's going to be interesting because we see Centennial will be taking on another Trinity League foe, Olu, next week. So I have to wonder if this kid's going to get more looks. So we'll have more on that later. But that was pretty much summed up this game.
Yeah, like you mentioned last week, Trillian Harris is at another quarterback at at Centennial Corona. I don't know if he's a sit-out guy or he's also a junior, but we're talking about a lot of quarterbacks there. And so let's move to our players of the week. It seems like we got it might be a player race here for player of the week out of this modern day Centennial clash. Maybe I'm going to go with Bryce Young because he was 19 of 26 at high percentage, 191, 3 yards. But I certainly won't blame you if you go with Quincy, because he had a long touchdown run and he also maybe recovered or forced a fumble. Correct.
And that was the thing. It was either Bryce or him. Pretty much, I think Bryce will have more opportunities. But Quincy basically, put everyone on notice. Not only did he get the start, but he did score the 57-yard run on a third down. He did block 2 extra points, although one of them was a bobbled snap, but he was so quick off the line. He did add a nice 25-yard kickoff return that he was 2 guys shy of kind of breaking it, and then he did recover the botched fumble on the punt. So, he set that tone, and it just showed that, I think he's going to do special teams force, and then basically that he can be that home run hitter if he gets in the open field. And then my honorable mentions, I went with Miles and Ty for, holding Cormit to 0 sacks and no hurries.
So is your pick Quincy? Is that who you're going with?
Yeah, that's my pick.
Okay.
And then I give we'll give an honorable mention because sometimes we'll have, more names. So
yeah. And I didn't see it on the broadcast yet, but did Quincy win the Gary Paskowitz Player of the Game? I put out a tweet that I thought that was a great addition,
Bryce
or did they went with Bryce? Okay.
Yeah.
No, good picks all around. But I was wondering who won the first Gary Paskowitz Award, which, in case some of you guys don't know, he was a former, USC insider, We Are SC website. And he was, Orange County guy, South County guy. He worked, on a lot of these TV broadcasts. He was associated with Fox, and I could go on and on. But you guys all probably know who Gary Pascoe is. But the Fox Sports West Prime Ticket broadcast, they have a new award for their Player of the Game from the Game of the Week, the Gary Paskowitz Player of the Week Award. And what a great honor for Gary, who passed away not too long ago. So now before we talk about the next game of the night from week 0, I want to introduce that the voice you're about to hear is sophomore Orange Lutheran quarterback Logan Gonzalez. How's it feeling afterwards winning this game?
It feels great. It's what we worked for. Malik, Tiger, and me. We all come from Marietta, so we all have that chemistry for the past couple of years.
Oh, really?
Yes, sir. So it's gonna be a good season.
All right, so Scotty, Orange Lutheran opened its season at a game that I took in, 27-21 victory over San Juan Hills at Orange Coast College, and it was an entertaining game. It was a slow start. If people were following my tweets, it was 0-0 after the first quarter, and I think it was Orange Lutheran 7-0 at halftime, and then the game came alive and was very entertaining. There was a lot of big plays, so there was a couple of defensive breakdowns, that allowed some of these plays to happen. So, but there was also some good players that were making those plays. So a little bit of some good play and some play that could be better. But it was a very revealing game, an entertaining game for Orange Lutheran, because they showed a lot of their young promise, which is a few years away from materializing when I think Orange Lutheran will be good. But these guys are definitely a year or two away. But like I mentioned, sophomore quarterback Logan Gonzalez did outstanding, threw 2 touchdown passes. He threw one to freshman Tiger Bachmeyer, who made a fantastic diving catch in the back of the end zone. And then he also threw a touchdown to Malik Blockman, a sophomore, in the front of the end zone, and another catch that he beat double coverage and made a diving grab. So Logan Gonzalez, his first start as Orange Lutheran quarterback, not an easy spot, because he's replacing Ryan Helinski, and so it was, and he's playing a pretty good San Juan Hills team that has a good defensive coordinator, and they have some definitely some good players on defense. So I thought Logan managed the game well, and Orange Lutheran also got a very good ground game from Cooper Vanderhill, who a senior who ran for about 125 yards on 26 carries. They really they were a little bit more run heavy than pass, which is expected. David Tack also emerged as a good receiver. Senior made a pretty juggling catch. So Orange Lutheran made some athletic catches, and they had a pretty good. They played pretty well on defense. They had a trouble with Joey Hobart, who we talked about last week, a commit to Washington State. They left him open one time on about a 60-yard touchdown, just completely unmarked, and so it was a complete breakdown. So it was a gift, but on that one, I don't know how that that will be obviously concerning that they didn't mark that guy, but it happens, high school football. And then there was another time where they tried to tackle a quick out to Joey, and it turned into a quick out, like 5-10 yard pass, and he bounced off a defensive back that didn't wrap up, and maybe but it's Joey Hobart. He's a lot stronger than he might look. I mean, he looks like a great player already, but he's really strong and plays very aggressively. So you have and that was a lesson that you really got to wrap up, and you have to be ready to tackle him. So but that was my impressions. I thought Olu showed some promise, and they played pretty well on defense.
Yeah, I know we know Orange Lutheran's a young team, and we saw that offense with 2 to 3, starting seniors coming back on it. So, this actually was a really good win for a rebuilding team battling that South Coast League foe, with Division 4. But I do stress battle from what I saw, because I think, San Juan Hills gave them all that they can handle.
Yeah.
And so it makes you wonder, that was, a non-top 10 team. So, what's going to happen down the line. But more importantly, what it created for them was confidence playing that first varsity game, especially with the young quarterback who, like we said, he put up decent numbers, but more importantly, no turnovers.
Yes.
It doesn't sound like he took care of the ball, that he didn't throw erratic, though it may not have been, these plays may not have been as spectacular as some of the other performances that we've seen, with these young kids, but they did make plays when needed. Like you mentioned, freshman Tiger Bachmeyer. I mean, he looks like a freshman when he does,
yes,
when he takes the helmet off. You think he would be playing JV or freshman. I mean, he made that sliding, corner catch in the end zone. Like you mentioned, Malik Blackman, that other nice toe tapping catch. But like we had said, but what may not be shown in these highlights is the fact that I think this is very important, and I know you just kind of touched bases on it a little bit, was that Olu had his first 100-yard rusher, and I think in about 3 seasons, single.
Wow.
So I don't know.
I'll have to
You
look
may have
that
to
up.
check that. We may have to check that out. But I mean, because before, remember with Helinski, they threw the heck out of the ball, and they struggled running the ball. So, he went for that 124 yards, with the workmanlike performance with 26 carries, which we said we suspect that it was to take the pressure off the young quarterback, and then on the flip side, Joey Holbert, put a clinic on, and those Olu defenders, weren't able to stay with him with his 10 catches for 218. And, that's interesting, too, because they're going to see another top receiver this week and probably in a lot faster, too, with Gary Bryant. So.
Joey's pretty darn fast. I mean, if you check out, I'm sure you did, and other people, if you check out my Twitter, which is OCVarsity Guy, I had a couple of them, and he just, on his long touchdowns, he's really running away. I'm sure, he's really fast. But, to your point, it's a great stat, Scotty, on Cooper, and I will definitely look to research that. I did at times, because there were so many run plays at the game, I was able to get the binoculars on the offensive line at Orange Lutheran, and I did there's a couple of plays where I really just watched the line. I knew it was going to be a run play. They did get off the ball pretty well, and there's some of the run plays where guards are just really throwing kids back, and they're getting off the ball nice, and those were nice runs, stuff that you have to watch. But they had some really good surges and came off the ball. And I got to watch Jason White, who's number 55, and he's pretty athletic, and they kind of moved him around. There was there was a lot of double tight end sets, as you probably are expecting, Scotty. And I saw Jason at a little bit of tight end when they went double tight ends, and some of their interior guys. And I wrote down some O-lineman numbers that I'll get out on the on Twitter or on some kind of story. But I thought their O-line did outstanding. And one D lineman who I thought also was pretty active was, as I'm looking for his name here on on my roster, Wurzma is the guy. He had 1.5 sacks, and he was pretty active. He also had a late strip that led to a key. This is Joseph Wurzma, senior. 6'4", 220, pretty tall defensive end. He had a strip that led to a key fumble deep in San Juan Hills territory that led to kind of the winning score. And also R.J. Regan had a good, very momentum shifting, a long kickoff return. So Scotty, my player of the week from this game, just because of how much they did put him the ball in his hands, and 26 carries, was Cooper Vanderhill, a senior. I considered Logan just because he did so well as a sophomore, and Olu didn't have any turnovers, and of course San Juan Hills had 2. They muffed a punt, and they lost that fumble. But I went with player of the week, Cooper Vanderhill.
I went with Cooper Vanderhill as well.
Okay.
Basically for taking that pressure off the quarterback, being possibly the first 100-yard plus rusher. My honorable mention, I gave it to Logan for his 2 touchdowns and no turnovers in his first varsity start.
All right. So like we said, Trinity League had a great opening week 0, went 5-0, and one of those teams was Santa Margarita. Went on the road. They won 33-14 over Redlands East Valley. This game was at Citrus Valley in Redlands. So they got the first victory in the first game of the Brett Visselmeyer reign as the new head coach of Santa Margarita. But it was an interesting game for me, enlightening, because of how Santa Margarita's defense played. Holding Redlands East Valley to 14 points. That was one of the Achilles' heel was for last year with the Eagles, is that they really struggled in defense, and they got in these high-scoring games, and they just couldn't close them out. They always looked to me like they needed to play better defense, and that's the reputation of Coach Visselmeyer. He's the former defensive guru at Orange Lutheran, the coordinator when they were at their best under Coach Kunow. So they didn't allow any points in the first half, and then offensively wise, Colt Fulton went 13 of 20, 200 yards, 2 touchdowns. Pretty nice debut for Colt Fulton in his first start for Santa Margarita. So they didn't have any great receiving stats, but Tyler Wetmore did catch 2 touchdowns. Not a lot of receptions. I think the most receptions, they spread it out, 2 and 3, receptions per guy. Nick Barcelos, who we expected was kind of a workhorse, 17 carries for 88 yards. But there was an interesting guy that I thought did well defensively, who I've written about a time or two, and I've kind of been waiting for him to have some kind of breakout moments, and he had it in this game, Scotty, and that was Mark R. Jr. He had a 2 pass deflections, and he had a pick 6 return for a touchdown for 40 yards. Santa Margarita actually intercepted 3 passes. Like I said, that's what impressed me, the defense. And then junior linebacker Anthony Cumstro had 9 total tackles, so he was not too far behind Vaughns from Bosco. So he almost got 10 tackles. So he led the defense. So it was interesting to see, Mark R. Jr., who, has been on the radar as a recruit, hasn't really ever blossomed. There he is. That could be a great sign for Santa Margarita.
Yeah, Santa Margarita needed something to start this season off on a high note. And they actually got that great start, taking their opening scoring drive of the season. Marched down the field and scored. With Cole Fulton connecting with 3 different receivers on that drive, with Tyler Whitmore catching it was like a 40-yard post for the score, and it was nice timing.
Nice.
But from there, their offense struggled to move the ball with consistency, and that was like their lone offensive score of the half. But like we said, they were bailed out by their defense, coming up with those 3 interceptions with the 2 pick sixes by Mark, as you mentioned. The other one was Kanao Kama. And they also had another interception by another sophomore DB.
Okay.
And, then they were also aided with the safety. Rev snapped it out of the end zone, so that added to their scoring total. And then in the second half, they added another touchdown from Fulton to Whitmore again, and then another field goal to cap off the scoring night. It was another interesting game because we're of this having 2 quarterbacks, starting their first start to the season.
Yeah, exactly.
With Cole Fulton finishing, like you said, 13 of 20. And then one other key note, Josh Contreras, who was the other quarterback, transfer, I guess now is playing receiver, and he was actually their leading receiver on the night. So he was the one with the 3 catches for 44 yards. He actually, one of the catches was pretty nice, and it actually shows that he's pretty athletic. So it'll be interesting to watch to see if he becomes which of these 3 guys becomes Fulton's go-to guy. But it was just like Olu. It was a confidence builder. They're taking one game at a time, and just marching onward. Again, they're going to be another just like Olu. The next game is a tough one as they're going to take on Mission Viejo.
Yeah.
So it was a good win for Margarita.
Nice. And I'm going to ask you after we have one more game summary, and then I'm going to have a poll that I think I'm going to put out on my Twitter. And you guys listen to the podcast, you're going to get the genesis of the poll question here after we ask Scotty about one more game. But before we leave the Eagles, remind me and the Trinity League podcast, Scotty, where's Contreras from, Josh?
Alta Loma.
Okay, got it. I remember you've said that before. So, okay. So players of the week for Santa Margarita, I went with Anthony Comstro, the junior linebacker with the 9 total tackles. I gave out my shout out to Mark Art, who I did consider that. I wasn't sure what part of the game he got that pick 6, but I still went with Anthony Comstro. 9 total tackles. That's going to be important because they're Nick Barstelos. They're trying to have him play running back, and they're going to need guys that can make some tackles at linebacker. So I went with Anthony. Who did you pick, Scotty?
I went with Cole Fulton.
Nice.
Completing 65% with the 2 touchdowns, again, in his first varsity start, as we keep mentioning.
Yeah.
My honorable mention, I went with the Eagles secondary because, like you had said, last year they were toasted, and Mark Ard, Keanu Kama, and the sophomore Jalen Jones, added those interceptions, and Jalen Jones also had a couple of nice pass deflections and coverage. So that had to be a sign of a plus, especially, with all these passing teams that they're going to see.
All right. So our last game to recap from week 0, Jay Sarah went on the road, Salt Lake City, Utah, and came away with a 24-14 victory against, and a hard-fought, close victory against East of Utah. So this game was really in the balance going into the fourth quarter, as I'm sure Scotty's going to talk about. It was JSerra Lions were up 14-6 going into the fourth quarter. This game was definitely in doubt, and that included some big plays. They got a big special teams play from junior outstanding linebacker Jaden Genova, who blocked a field goal probably around, it was probably snapped around the 20 or 25, and he recovered it around the 15. He blocked it, athletically picked it up, ran into the end zone. So say what you want about East's execution, but that was further evidence that I thought when I saw JSerra play limited in the summer. I thought Jaden looked pretty good to me, and looked more athletic and was improving. And I thought, wow, that's the guy that I saw in passing league making some, interception, pick six in passing league, and that was a nice play. And that was huge for them. Obviously, the game was very close. Chris Street had an outstanding game. He scored the first touchdown for JSerra. 23 carries, 132 yards, 2 touchdowns. Very Chris Street-like. And then a big stat for Chris Street. It's going to transition to what I'm about to talk about, the JSerra passing game. Chris Street had 3 catches in this game. That's pretty huge because Chris Street, all of last year, his junior season, the Cal commit only had 7 catches all year. The Lions talked about, hey, we're going to try to throw the ball at Chris Street more often. That's a great idea because you just want him in open space and get the ball to him as much as you can. Move him around, get him in, take some hits out of him, put him at, decoy him, do whatever you need to do to get him some more touches. And that was promising. But it was also, as we talked about debuts for Trinity League quarterbacks, it was the debut for General Booty, transfer, a lot of OC roots back in Orange County. So General, had a kind of a tough go in his first game, 9 of 21 with 1 interception, no touchdowns. So, but hey, it's his first start in the Trinity League. His team won. I'm sure he did some positives as well. So, and those are positives that, he did help his team win. It's in the Trinity League, on the road. None of these other guys we're talking about. Santa Margarita was on the road, but they weren't out of state for Colt. And, and Logan from Orange Lutheran, was playing at Orange Coast College. So it was, and he was playing a really good team. So kind of mixed results, but I'm sure, I'm still very high on General, and I think he'll definitely bounce back. It's going to be a tough game this week, as we'll allude to. But what were your thoughts on this game, Scotty?
If the masses, the fans, the majority of the pollsters saw this game, they'd certainly downgrade JSerra. They went into Utah, came away with the win, but it was, I don't know, to me it was just unimpressive versus a sloppy triple option East squad who turned the ball over 6 times. And I'm not going to say that they were caused.
Yes.
I know JSerra had some good jarring hits, but most of them, when you play option teams, that's usually what happens if you're not a disciplined team. They also had 1 interception. And after all of that, the Lions could come up with only 14 offensive points. JSerra jumped out on top with the Chris Street 1-yard run after East botched fumble punt inside the 5-yard line. The next series, Jaden Genova blocked the punt, scooped it up, and scored. It wasn't a field goal, it was a punt. So that put them up 14-0 going into halftime. And then East had their chance to put up points, but the turnovers killed them in the most opportune times. They threw a red zone interception in the end zone with New Zealand Williams making like a diving catch. Then later with the score 14-6, the big 6'2", he was about 235. Sion Aguga ran 32-yard touchdown down the sidelines. Then East quarterback goes 80 yards, only to have junior quarterback Jaden Mix track him down from behind, and he tomahawked the ball as it rolled out into the end zone, and then JSerra recovered, dodging another potential East score. And then JSerra later capitalized on another East fumble, added a 24-yard field goal to make it 17-6. Then Street added another TD run with 2 minutes left in the game to make it, put him up on top to make it 24-6. And then East kept fighting back because 1 minute left. They score on a 5-yard run. but that's the way it would end, and it stand 24-14. And like we had mentioned, Booty was only able to muster 111 yards. He was 42% passing. The ground game added 151 yards, with 50 of it coming out of it on a Chris Street run. Street was pretty much bottled up. Take that one run away, he only had 74 yards. He was averaging 5 yards a carry, so they never got anything big. He did carry the ball 23 times. And then East finished the night with 312 rushing yards, but -2 negative passing because they don't throw the ball. But that short field and mishaps and turnovers killed East. So, and I know I saw a quote last week by Harlow saying, he's talking about, Jay Sarah gelling together, and he just hopes, whether it comes sooner or later, but he hopes it comes sooner. But I think until they gel together, the lack of big playmakers is apparent for Jay Sarah. And, when Street gets taken away and contained, that's what happens. And that you had made that point that they tried to get him the ball. He had 3 receptions because he is, by far their best, skill guy. So, and we're going to have to see, this week, because they're going to be playing a team this week, an out-of-state team that has a lot of skill. So, and we'll talk about that in a little bit later.
Yes. Well, let's go to our Players of the Week, and great insight there from Scotty Barajas. And let's go from our Players of the Week from Jay Sarah in their opening 24-14 victory against East. I went with Chris Street for those 23 carries, 132 yards, 2 touchdowns, 3 receptions. Who did you go with? Anybody other than Chris Street, Scotty?
I went with Jaden Genova with the block punt, the score. They also, even though they gave up 312 yards, I think he kind of set the tone. Also, Sele Salufa also had a few good tackles for loss, recovered fumble. So I know, they, even though they gave up all those yards, I think they were, pretty, instrumental in
okay.
At least limiting their scoring.
Yeah, I'd like to know how many total you know what? And, as we talked about John Vaughns and the linebacker at Santa Margarita, Anthony Comstro, I bet you with 31 with all that rushing of 300 yards, the leading tackler in week 0 most undoubtedly must have been one of the Jay Sarah linebackers. They just had more. They had so many opportunities, so we'll have to try to get those defensive stats. Let us move on now to week 1 and start to do our previews of some really intriguing games as the season's just going to keep ramping up with more, Trinity League versus, the best in the USA. There's going to be 4 games on Friday, August 30th, and we have 2 games, Mater Dei and Jay Sarah, that actually play on Saturday, August 31st, last day of August. But let's talk about the team that hasn't played yet. We haven't given them any love because they haven't played. So you can't get upset with us, Friar fans. We're leading you off. Week 1, Servite, year 2 of Troy Thomas. The return begins. Servite plays at JW North on Friday, 7 o'clock kickoff. I'm expecting the Friars to really roll in this game. They got to get their mojo. They got to be impressive in the game on the road. This is a dress rehearsal. They're going to be on the road next Saturday night, September 7th, on the road against Bishop Gorman, who's rising in the national rankings, won their first game. JW North also won their first game. They've already played a game. But they were 5-6 last year, Scotty. But I'm thinking Servite's going to get a big win. JW North, they opened with a 17-14 victory against nearby Grand Terrace of San Bernardino area. What do you think of this matchup?
Yeah. JW North was once a formidable program. They've been regulated to a middle-of-the-pack Division 10 team. So, their lone returning skill player is a sophomore running back who ran for 1,000 yards last year and 12 touchdowns as a freshman. So, Venancio Michaela Ile. So, I think whether or not he can be a one-man team, he's the only returning guy they have. So, and then since Servite didn't get a scrimmage, and didn't have his week 0 game, this is going to be more like a scrimmage for the Friars. I see them getting down there, getting their timing down, get some work in. before heading off to Gorman the following week. But I don't find the Friars struggling in this one bit.
All right, so Scotty and I are both picking Servite to win. Those are both our picks there. Clear. Let's move on, Scotty, to Orange Lutheran on the road on Friday, August 30th at Centennial Corona. That's a 7 o'clock kickoff. I got to think the Huskies are pretty upset after being, handled by Mater Dei. They're going to have to start to regroup and get their season back on track. Orange Lutheran got, key victory, but I think they can play. I think they believe they can play better. They had some big time, they had a couple defensive lapses and breakdowns that they're going to work on. Going to still try to work on evolving that offense, but I think it's going to be a lot of ground game. The line of scrimmage is going to have to play well, and they're going to have to, continue to play well defensively. So there's one of their linebackers needed to be helped off the field, and he is a good one from Orange Lutheran last week. So we'll have to see what his status is this week. But that was Jared Amacio, went down from a hard low tackle by Joey Hobart, who, like I said, he's a very aggressive, explosive player. In some ways, Scotty, he reminds me a little bit. I know this is super high praise, but he's not that much different to me. He reminded me a little bit of Matt Grudegood, actually. But he's a receiver, but the way he's kind of a missile out there. He is definitely a missile. When you watch him tackle, the way he comes up, he's crazy, man. Joey is on the onside kick. Pretty scary seeing that guy come at you because he is ultra aggressive. But so we'll have to see what Jared Amacio does. But I think this is going to be a tough game for Orange Lutheran. They got the one they needed. But we'll have to see where the state of mind is for Centennial. But there should be a lot of improvements. They always say there's a big improvement from your first game to your second one. But I'm still picking Centennial to win this game. But what's your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, exactly. We're going to see how much Centennial bounces back after getting dominated by Mater Dei. And do they stay with their rotating quarterbacks, or does he pull the trigger and make that change? But I think you're going to see a third quarterback added to that mix. Perhaps Retzloff and it was interesting because you had made a point about Trillian Harris, and I didn't stop you at last time because I was going to make this point now. But I forgot about him too, and so when Retzloff came in, nobody thought about him, but apparently he was on their depth chart as he was supposed to be their starting punter, Trillian Harris. Okay, but why didn't he make the appearance? Well, that's because, you're going to get this, he checked out of Centennial last week.
Wow.
And is now at his fifth school, Colony, Ontario. And he played last Friday night, coming off the bench, tossed a touchdown, went 13 for 19, 190 yards in Colony's loss.
Wow.
Talk about, that's insane and crazy. And how they got that,
what a road. What a road.
Yeah. That's all I'll say, but I was shocked in that because he should have been that third quarterback coming off the bench, but apparently he didn't. So anyway, so back to kind of sidetrack there for a little bit, but it kind of all played together because we were talking to quarterbacks. But
yes.
So that's something to potentially look for because Retzloff looked more poised and throwing than the other two guys. But then if the other two quarterbacks don't have that same Mater Dei rush, they may be able to play a little bit better. So that's just something to keep watch on. But then defensively, the Huskies are going to create problems for that Lancer offense. You think they had trouble with San Juan Hill's defensive end, Tyler Wegas, who had 12 tackles, 3 hurries, and a sack. Then what do you do with Corey Foreman, And as Olu, they don't have that same caliber as athletes as Mater Dei, nor that strength on the O-line. And then you sure won't have anybody to cover Gary Bryant. And Centennial had some young DBs, that played really well there. They actually Jaden Mickey made a nice interception on Bryce. Bryce actually kind of laid out a kind of a fade, and the sophomore corner made a beautiful play and kind of out-timed that his jump over position in front of C.J. Williams, and they both kind of came down together with it, but then I guess they gave it to the corner, but he played it as well as anybody could. So I think that they're gonna lock down those potential Olu receivers. So just getting by San Juan Hills isn't going to be enough looking at this one on paper. So I look for Centennial to win this one.
Okay. Well, we could I was impressed with R.J. Reagan. I tried to see how much he matched up. Junior cornerback, he's their best cornerback at Orange Lutheran, and tried to see how much he matched up with Joey. And I have to be honest, it was a little hard for me to tell. But he wasn't the guy that got bounced off of, I don't believe, on the 80-yarder. And I don't know who's to say who left him open, Joey on that 60-yarder. So, but I think he's an outstanding defensive back. So we'll see and I think it's going to be really important for Orange Lutheran, to control that time of possession, run the ball effectively with Cooper Vanderhill. One guy they ran it with was Jonah Laban. He's a good running back on short distance. He's also a big-time linebacker. He goes 6 foot 245. He's a load when they're in short distance. Another guy that looked pretty good, a safety running back. I would like to see him get some more carries, but Cooper was on a roll. But Travis Lagazian, he looked like he had a little burst of him too. So not having, Jared's a key guy on linebacker for Orange Lutheran. So hopefully he's okay. But it's also early in the year, and I think Orange Lutheran's going to have a shot against Servite and Santa Margarita. Maybe Jay Serra. So they're going to have to think big picture and hopefully Jared's okay. But let's move on to another game, Scotty, coming up on Friday. So the Braves, they're going to have a short week. They played on Saturday. They are home again, though. Second home game in a row. They're playing Don Bosco Prep of New Jersey, kind of another former type national ranked team that's not quite as strong as they used to be. But this is still a powerhouse from the East Coast, and they're making their debut. That's got to be real tough. Play your first game of the year out in California when you're coming from the East Coast. That's going to be difficult. I'm sure DJ is going to want to get that, some of that connection going with his receivers. But I think Bosco's going to win this game. I don't think Don Bosco's prep is as strong as they have been from Ramsey, New Jersey. But what's your take on this game, Scotty?
Yeah, so they were the Iron Men, they are called.
Yes.
6-5 last year. This will be their first game. They're the number 3 ranked team in New Jersey, but they're 199 nationally. So that's kind of a discrepancy. It gives you an idea there where they're placed in the national scene.
Yeah.
So it's the first game of the year with a new coach. A tough task for a team making a trek to the West Coast, coming off of disappointing seasons because they've been 8-13 their last 2 years. And so their coach, Mike Teal, who is a former Rutgers quarterback, he resigned. So, they lost many, probably about 4 games in the last minutes, including 2 overtime games last year. So, however, they do have the number 2 recruit New Jersey and running back. Another running back Bosco's going to see again, Jalen Berger, who holds multiple offers that include Alabama and Penn State. But he wasn't their leading rusher last year. It was a kid named Kyle Monagai, finished with 1,200 yards rushing. He had 19 touchdowns too. So, Berger ran for 750 yards, and both are capable of playing in the backfield or the slot. So they're very versatile backs to give Bosco plenty of offensive options, and they're going to need them. So, the Ironmen have been known for tough defenses in the past, despite those years, the setback. They have a Jamar Green who returns as the 3-year starter on the defensive line. Linebacker Colin Ramos coming off a breakout season. I know I'm throwing out all these names, but for you guys, diehard people, you guys can take these to heart and look them up. But,
I will.
According to the new head coach, their real strength is going to lie in their secondary. They have 4 returning starters. Romaine Robinson, I think he's a Navy commit. Arsheen Giles at corner. Michael Courtney and Nick Alvarado are going to anchor the safeties. And he says that's going to be the identity of the team. So that's interesting because we will see if those words heed on a national level going against, this St. John Bosco attack. So.
Well, great breakdown and preview, Scotty. That You're making me look a little bit more. Maybe Don Bosco Prep will make this maybe a little bit interesting, but I'm picking Bosco to win comfortably. I think the team they played last week definitely is better. So I think no doubt about it. I think that was a bigger game, but you got to still. I think DeMath is better out of Maryland than Don Bosco Prep of Ramsey, but you still got to go back to back, and then St. John Bosco will be playing next Friday at Bishop Gorman against Liberty of Henderson, and Liberty lost its first game. They're already 0-1, so Bosco can get on a roll. The Braves can get on a roll. They beat another East Coast team at home. Gotta like their chances. And you're picking Bosco too, right, Scotty?
Right. And I didn't get that actually in there, but yeah, I was going with the Braves in this one. I don't think. Yeah, they don't have, other than the one running back, I don't think they have as high-profile guys as DeMatha did, and seeing what they did to DeMatha, unless, their offense is a little more sophisticated. And again, I go back to that. Something that I kind of saw over the weekend, which is kind of crazy, is that I see all these national teams coming out, and I can't believe how bad their offense sophistication is compared to the West Coast and California teams. Either Bosco and all the Trinity League, I guess it's just so much of an elite level, but you get these teams and they just look like they've never played the position before. It's like they put an athlete at quarterback, or there's just no play calling in inventions or what. So it's just like, that's the one thing that I've noticed, is that if these teams, because they have the linemen, they have the linebackers, you look at them, they pass the eye test. But if they were able to move the ball, on these teams consistently, it would be a different story. But that's just a side note that I've just, while watching all these games recently. So
yeah, Trinity League's very blessed when you have Bryce Young, USC, DJ Ugalele, Clemson. I mean, you got two of the best right there, probably the two best quarterbacks in the country in one league, both senior years. So it'll be different next year with some new blood, but it's. The rest of the league, the rest of the country, has got some work to do. So, Scotty, maybe certainly the best game of Friday night coming up this Friday is going to be, I think, the one that intrigues me the most is Mission Viejo, 1-0, went to Hawaii and won. They play against Santa Margarita, also 1-0. That game is going to be at Trabuco Hills, 7:00. These South County teams, they have a big-time rivalry. There's a lot of these kids that know each other. Yeah, they're friends, but there's a big rivalry. Interesting, Mission Viejo coach Chad Johnson has had a lot of success, obviously from his roots at St. John Bosco against the Trinity League. He does, Mission got him last year. And, he's obviously he is very familiar and comfortable taking on Trinity League foes, probably of all comers. And he also is going back to his old high school where he played and coached. Where he coached. Excuse me, he didn't play at Trabuco, but he used to coach at Trabuco Hill, so it's kind of a little homecoming there for Chad Johnson. But Santa Margarita looked pretty impressive in their first game, but they're going to get a big test here and get a real. The Eagles are going to get a real idea about Trinity League type defensive fronts, because they might see their best defensive front of the entire year in Mission Viejo. They're that good, guys. That defensive line, Chad Johnson said it's as good a defensive line as he's ever had, and he says that includes Bosco. And they have a great linebacker in Easton Mascarenas so the front seven is loaded, and then the weakness for Mission is the secondary, but I don't know if that's necessarily plays up well for Santa Margarita in this matchup. Like we said, Colt Fulton, new quarterback, but they showed some problems early on, on offense in their last game against Redlands East Valley. So maybe that is somewhere Santa Margarita looks to attack. But the thing with the defensive line, Santa Margarita's going to have to pass block. They're going to have to give a lot of time, and I don't know if they're going to have the time. They're going to have to be creative. They're going to have to get rid of the ball quickly, and then we'll see how the defense stacks up. And then, of course, probably the most intriguing thing about this game is the transfer situation, where you have Peter Castelli, the quarterback from Mission Viejo, playing against his old teammates. and there's a couple other former Eagles going against their teammates. So it's kind of like the transfer bowl of the year, almost, maybe, in Orange County, where you have Castelli, Logan Schwanke, a defensive end who's outstanding for for Mission Viejo. He's a former Santa Margarita guy. Chase Nenad, maybe the best receiver, one of the best receivers at Mission Viejo. He's a former Eagle. And I think there's a couple more guys that maybe are a little bit under the radar. But there's a lot going on emotionally in this game. I'm sure Santa Margarita is going to play up that big time. It works to their advantage to do that. But pretty entertaining game, Scotty.
Yeah, this one does have a lot of those storylines. I kind of forgot about some of those, but I do remember, that Caselli was there, and what I recall that this Santa Margarita game and Mission Viejo game reminds me of when Santa Margarita played that loaded Mission team when Caselli was a sophomore. I don't know if you remember that game or not. Margarita lost everything. They had all these new guys, this young team, and they had this transfer quarterback from Bosco, and that's kind of the kind of that same feeling that I kind of have with this one. But now you add all the other extra elements to it with all that backstory information. Mission, did play last week and 38-14 went over a Kangwaki, a Hawaiian team.
Yeah.
And they got actually 213 yards rushing by committee by three. They balanced it out between three running backs, and then Caselli put up 160 yards, but he wasn't sharp, 11 out of 29. So it's still going to be a tall task for this, the rebuilding Santa Margarita team. Even though they showed a lot of promise with that East Valley. That Redlands East Valley team, but Santa Margarita is far from that level of play, and we'll see if that like I said, that defensive line is going to start making its mark and becoming that supposedly one of the top D lines in the county. That's kind of what I want them waiting to see, and I wish I would have seen that last week when they were at the scrimmage, because I still think there's a couple other teams that have better defensive lines than they do, but we'll just have to wait and see.
All right, and before we preview our next game, I'm going to let you guys listen to a little bit of Chad Johnson talking about his outstanding defensive line at Mission Viejo.
Yeah, you can't get to him. You can't get your hands on you. So, Lance is phenomenal. Mike Carrion and Keanu inside, and Schwanke. I mean, it's tough. I mean, we've really struggled to block our own defense so far, and we've gone, best on best in our fall camp. Now, having said that, I tell our offensive line, listen, when you go to the game, you're not going to see any four guys better than this.
Yeah, right. 2 more games to go, both on Saturday. I'm going to be at this one. It's going to be Mater Dei against Villa Park. It's going to be back at Santa Ana Stadium, 7:30 kickoff. This is 2 teams ranked in the Orange County top 10. This is Villa Park stepping up as maybe the boldest, bravest Orange County public school, really stepping up the competition. We just saw what Mater Dei did against Centennial, another public school, the top public school arguably in California, in Centennial. You saw the big gap between Mater Dei and Centennial. What does that mean for Villa Park? This is their first game. They do have some intriguing players. The Facio brothers are outstanding. Zion and Zeus are really athletic. They have a new quarterback. They have their running back back. They have their top linebacker back. But are they Centennial Corona? No, they're not. But they have a young, bold coach in Deucin Ansich. Last year, Villa Park beat Servite. They played right with Mission Viejo and narrowly lost and won the game by forfeit. But they've seen good competition. They scheduled this, like you said, Scotty, for a reason. They think they can go out there and compete. But I'm expecting, Mater Dei to roll in this game. It's maybe a trap game, a letdown game for Mater Dei mentally. That's probably the biggest thing. But what's your take on this game Saturday?
Yeah, so this is going to be Villa Park's first action of the year, including a scrimmage. The Division 4, the top-ranked team. I don't know if I think it was Fryer who may have mentioned it or not, but they were hit with a minor violation they held a team retreat on a Sunday that actually was no because it's considered a practice and it was on a Sunday, so it resulted in losing their scrimmage and then delayed their practice time. That pushed everything back. So that's why this game was actually supposed to be played, I believe, Thursday, and so they had to move it to Saturday because they hadn't met the requirements to practice in time to play the game. So a lot of people are asked why this, they're like they thought this was game on was in the middle of or Thursday instead of a Saturday. That is why. So and it's going to be tough. Task with it being their first game, let alone that they, come against a modern day team that already has a game under their belt. The Monarchs are going to see some, familiar faces with the former Monarchs, Zion and Zeus, who you mentioned, who are their main cogs in their offense and defense. Obviously, star running back Anthony Hakai is going to be expected to carry the load on the ground because they don't have their top receiver Dylan Bonilla. He's gone, so you're going to probably expect Zion to take much of a bigger lead on offense. I know he was big time on defense, but I think he's going to play more part on offense this year. They also have another returning Isaac Hermosillo, who actually had about 400 yards receiving last year. So, but like you said, the biggest question mark is going to be offensively because they lost Paul for I can't say it. You might be able to help me.
Oh, Paferi? Paul Paferi, yep.
Who threw for over 3,000 yards. He graduated, and they have the Fountain Valley transfer John Stupin, and he threw for 27 yards and 23 touchdowns last year. So he's capable. It's the competition may be different, but he's capable. So and their leading tackle is John Tuavo, linebacker. He had like 84 tackles last season. He's been like top guy for the last 2 years, and then Zeus and Alexander Antonuan are the two big defensive ends that are on defense. So this one's going to make Villa Park a better team, but Mater Dei can't get complacent. They still got to go in, take care of business, tighten up those areas, that Rollo, sees that, that they can improve on. But, Mater Dei is going to, most likely take this one.
Yeah, Mater Dei, one of those areas will certainly be penalties. I don't know if we talked about that in our game report, but they had 12 penalties in the opener, so that's something that they're going to want to work on. This would be a good opportunity against a team they should dominate. Can they play? How well can they play disciplined? And I talked to Josh Stupin, and he's pretty high on their team. He's a very smart quarterback who's got Trinity League ties. He spent time at St. John Bosco as a freshman. He also was at J. Sarah, and then he had a breakout year at Fountain Valley last year. Very competitive kid. And they have a couple other guys to watch, some guys maybe flying under the radar. They have a fullback transfer from El Medina, Romeo Jones, who I think the Spartans are high on. And they also have a returning slot receiver, Denell McCall. So he's a senior, and I think they're expecting him to have a great year. And they do have some size up front, and they have some seniors up front. So the offensive line could have as many as 4 starters on offense. So that could be, we'll see how they do. You would think that, Villa Park's they've been blown out in this game before against Mater Dei, but they're back again. And I give major props to Villa Park, like you said, for trying to get better. They're trying to win CIF, trying to win Division 4, which they haven't done in a very long time. I think this is how you do it. This is really, they're taking a page out of the old La Habra playbook. Play the toughest teams you can and get ready for your league to dominate and then to win tough playoff games. So that's where I think this stems from. Last game, Scotty, and I think it's a dandy. And maybe this is the game, another game that seems like it might be a tough one. And so we're both picking Mater Dei, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. Just to go back on that, you were talking about the play penalties, and I don't think we did mention the penalties, but I will say this though, in those penalties that they had, there was only one personal foul.
Very good.
Now I granted that, yeah. So there wasn't. So the jaw jacking or the talking is not there, and it was both sides. So the penalties that were called were false starts.
Yeah.
I think there was a holding, PI. I think a couple of blocks, in the back, but nothing was there wasn't the multiple personal fouls that there were last year. So this is a different modern day
Yeah.
team as far as their makeup is concerned. So I don't think, and it's just, I mean, they are aggressive. We've talked about this over and over about the aggressive nature that teams have. So the holding or, the PIs because of, they're all judgment calls. And so when, the game is physical and sometimes they don't realize how physical these games can be. So I think when teams play, and it's not just modern day, we notice when Bosco and the Trinity League teams play.
Yeah.
So, but I just wanted to add that in there. So
Yeah, good and point well taken, Scotty. Because the yardage on that I didn't mention it, but it was 12 penalties for 125, I believe. So that's 10 yards penalties. So it wasn't like multiple 15s that are gonna, or 30-yard penalties that are gonna, or double stuff that's gonna jack up that number. So, but last game of the we're going to talk about, it's actually an early game on Saturday, August 31st. It's a 3:30 kickoff, and that's going to be J. Sarah taking on St. Joseph Regional of New Jersey, Montvale, New Jersey. And how good are these guys? They're also making their season debut in California. This week, they're ranked number 6 in the country by High School Football America, and I'm sure they're in some other national rankings. But, Mater Dei is number 1. Bosco's 2, St. John's, who Mater Dei is gonna play out of Washington D.C. They're 3rd, and then you got a team from Pennsylvania, a team from Texas, and then there's St. Joseph Regional. So they're outstanding. I talked to Jeff Fisher of High School Football America and asked him how good was this New Jersey team, and this was Jeff Fisher's comment. Very talented. They won the state's biggest non-public state championship last year. Lots of returning talent, physical, and they've also beaten a Southern California team a couple years ago. They beat Sarah of Gardena. Jeff thought that this opening game hurts them because it's so far away, and obviously a really good team. But Fisher's very high on their head coach and their staff, and he thinks they'll have their kids ready. So, Scotty, based on what you shared with us about J. Sarah's somewhat shaky opening, this is going to be a tough game for J. Sarah. They're probably toughest of the non-league season, and I think they're gonna lose this game. I'm gonna pick St. Joseph. It seems like they are definitely legit, and this is a lot of trouble for J. Sarah with the way things are looking right now. Maybe late in the year, I would probably pick J. Sarah, but I'm gonna go with St. Joseph Regional in this game at Cathedral. 3:30 kickoff.
Yeah, I'm surprised. I thought they were like about 20th in the nation. They're the number 1 team in New Jersey. You didn't mention that St. Francis, that's who Mater Dei plays, and they played over the weekend. They looked like they're the number 1 team in Maryland. So I don't know how St. Joseph's got rated in there that high, but anyhow, it is going to be a battle. The Green Knights, they returned 7 starters, 4 on offense, 3 on defense. So they're going to be pretty much led by the nation's number 1 center, Luke Weipler, Ohio State guy, and their quarterback's actually Purdue commit, Michael Lamo. And he's considered the number 14th pro-rated passer, but he only threw for 1,400 yards last year, 13 touchdowns, 3 picks. The Knights seem to be more of a running team because they ran for 2,400 yards last year, and 1,900 of those yards returned between 3 running backs, led by 4-star junior Audek Estime, who ran for 861 yards, 12 touchdowns. He holds offers from Duke, Louisville, Boston College, and he's listed as the number 6 back in the 2021 junior class. Defensively, they're led by a Penn State commit, defensive end Amin Vanover, and a Rutgers commit, Elam Mack at safety, a 3-star corner, Christian Abram, who holds multiple offers, including Michigan and Boston College. So this is certainly going to be a challenge for J. Sarah, who I said is going to have trouble against teams with speed and athletes. St. Joe's has 6 players committed to D1 schools, and by the season's end, it's probably going to be 12.
Wow.
Though they are 2-5 playing games outside New Jersey. So, this one's going to come down to whether or not which teams, St. Joe's or J. Sarah, who can throw the ball. St. Joe's doesn't seem to be a true passing team, and I had mentioned it earlier about this lack of sophisticated passing offenses. So we're going to have to see if this one is one of them. Because again, they don't have any big time receivers. They don't have any, it's everybody has big time running backs, so, and, I don't know, compared to the California teams, so we'll just have to wait and see. So that's what's going to come down to me, whether or not can Jay Sarah throw or who's going to be able to throw this. But I'm leaning towards St. Joe's on this one.
Okay, so we're both picking St. Joseph's, and so those are our picks. I think Scotty and I agreed on all of them this week. We both have Servite winning, we have Bosco winning, we have Centennial Corona winning, we have Mater Dei winning, we have St. Joseph Regional winning, and we have Mission Viejo winning. But some pretty good games, wouldn't you say, Scotty? This is a pretty good schedule for week one.
It is. It is. It's again, like I said, this preseason is. It's great, and then it's going to take us right into the Trinity League, and every game every week in the Trinity League's great, and then we get into playoffs. But yeah, I like these big time matchups where we get to see all these out of state teams.
You got it. Now, I didn't do it as early as I wanted to, but my poll question, and I want to ask it to Scotty first. Who was the quarterback who did the best in his Trinity League debut in his first game in the Trinity League? Did you like Colt Fulton of Santa Margarita, Logan Gonzalez of Orange Lutheran, or General Booty of J. Sarah?
I'm going to go with Logan Gonzalez.
Logan Gonzalez takes it, sophomore, most impressive QB. So it looked like Colt Fulton will get my vote. I think looks like he had the best numbers. So I'm gonna go with I'll give a vote for Colt, narrow over Logan, who I thought looked very good for sophomore. Threw some great TDs and put the ball up for his teammates to win, but looked like maybe Colt had a tad better numbers, were comparable, maybe a little higher completion percentage, but hey, I think they both did great.
Nice pull. That was a good pull. Like I said, I think you had given Logan props earlier, and then I had given Fulton. So, like you said, it was kind of. I think either way, the only difference between is the turnover. He didn't commit the turnover. You always want to protect the ball.
Yep.
I think if he makes that completion, he was right at 60%. He was at 65%. It was pretty much an even. That's pretty much the difference between the two. But I think it was great for seeing those two guys get a good start.
Excellent. Well, Scotty, great job as always. This is an exciting week, and I can already feel the energy. And I'm looking forward to seeing you at Santa Ana Bowl on Saturday.
Oh, I'm glad to get to see you on Saturday, Dan. I wasn't sure which game you were going to do because I was going to ask you if I get to see you on Saturday.
Yeah, I was definitely thinking about getting down to San Diego, but I think I'm going to be sticking and seeing some OC teams. I always like seeing two OC teams play each other. That's just double the coverage of players for me to see. So I always side with that, and I look forward. So, Scotty, great insight. Good stat work, good previews of some players that we got to research, and even the crazy story of Trillian Harris. So you got it all tonight, Scotty. Thanks a lot.
As always, Dan, good to bring the info to everybody.
So for Scott Barajas, I'm Dan Albano with the Trinity League Football Podcast, and we'll talk to you next week. Thank you for listening.